Now, I know that those of you in the audience who know Aaron well, if you're sitting next to somebody who doesn't know him well, tell them that this is absolutely a true story. So I met Aaron many years ago over the phone. I was driving back from Little Rock, Arkansas to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Aaron had been given my phone number by a mutual friend whom I asked to call after I heard about Nozzle Forward, thinking it might be a good fit for FDIC. So Aaron calls me up. I'm just leaving Little Rock. When I arrived back home in Tulsa, about 400 miles later, Aaron was just wrapping up the call. That's a true story. I'm so grateful that since that initial call, Aaron and I have had many, many similar calls. And although Aaron only has a brief time on the stage this morning, I hope that all of you find the opportunity to visit with him sometime during this conference or in the future, because he is such an incredible intellect. He's a man of deep wisdom, a gentle and wise spirit that just connects with everyone he comes into contact with. Aaron and his team have been gracious enough to participate in the hands-on training program here at FDIC International for the past 6 years. Always the consummate professional, he and his team have brought that nozzle forward message to communities all across this great country of ours. They have given of their time and of their talent, not for the adulation of others or money, and to use a term that I've stolen from my good friend Eric Roden, not for gush coin. They do it because they really care. They truly care. That spirit is most emblematic of Aaron. In the years I've known him, I have never heard him to utter a cross word, to toss a demeaning term, or to impugn anyone's character. He's a man that I am extremely proud to call my friend. I don't want to cut into any more of his valuable time, so let me just give you a quick overview of his career so far. Aaron Fields is a firefighter for the Seattle, Washington Fire Department. His dad, is his dad in the room? Dad, did you make it? Mr. Fields, did you make it? He was going to try to get down here. His dad and his brother serve in the 5th Battalion. He's a member of Engine Company 13, and he was formerly assigned to Engine Company 28. He teaches engine company skills at the Washington State Fire Academy. He's the lead instructor of the FDIC Nozzle Forward program. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an incredible pleasure to welcome to you to this stage this morning our keynote presenter, Aaron Fields.
I haven't said anything yet. You don't know whether you want to clap. I appreciate it. My perspective is mine. And typically, when I'm talking, I'm talking about something. Something that isn't subjective. Something that is objective. Facts don't care about feelings. I'm a hands-on instructor. I feel the cleanest when I'm doing work. Hey, Ray, I checked, I made sure. I feel the cleanest when I'm doing work. And I grew up very different than a lot of people did. I grew up in a neighborhood where there was no majority. I've traveled the fire service and I'm invited into a lot of houses, not because I set out to teach a class. I'm an accidental instructor. I never intended to do this. I ate a healthy dose of humble pie very, very early. And that shaped the way that I look at things. It shaped the way that I was going to advance with things. And comfort is the enemy of growth. If you're comfortable, you're not paying attention. And as I traveled the fire service and I looked around, I saw that mustaches and tattoos were clearly what we need to be good firefighters. I have neither, so I work my ass off. I came to the fire service from a place unlike some and like others, but I was a little older. And I came in and I was impressed and enthused with some of what I saw. And I was incredibly disappointed about some of what I saw. So I set out on a course that took me around the country to actually study. For about 9 years, I focused solely on the back of the engine. I've had great mentors that were both positive and great mentors that were not. But I'm a full-grown adult. I don't need parents. I have them. In my household, growing up, my mother didn't let us watch TV, and there was reasons for it. I'm from the of some of you, I actually speak metrics. I'm so far northwest that some of you are like, is he from Canada? I don't know where that's at. And my neighborhood was one of many languages, 63 distinct languages within 3 minutes of my firehouse, not including dialects. My neighbors spoke different languages. So really early on, I was cued into what language really is and how words work and mental maps lead to technical proficiency. I don't care how you say it. What the fire service is based on is trust. I'm going to stop for a second. When Cap was out here getting his award, what did you notice about the presentation that they put up here? What did you notice? In every single slide, he was not wearing sunglasses. The reason the military wears sunglasses is because they want to separate and have that distinction. This is the fire service. This is based on trust. I got to know my homie's got my back. And in order to do that, you need to see my eyes. If you need eye protection, make sure it's clear. Because if they can't see your eyes, they don't trust you on a very psychological level, or subtle level. So whether Cap knew that or not, whether he could articulate it quite that way or not, he was doing it. What else did you notice? Why he was so deserving of the Lifetime Achievement? He was always talking with. He was never talking to. I'm not interested in sound bites. I'm not interested in Facebook. It's ether. I'm interested in sweat. And sweat has organic material in it. And the sweat that we put into the ground is what's going to grow the next generation. We're not this industry's parents. We're this industry's advocates and ambassadors. And we should behave like such. And what we need to give each other is a place to work. Because work fixes everything. You want a shortcut? It's not on Facebook. You can bird it out if you want to. The little blue bird, whatever it's, tweets, you can do that too. And there's a place for that, I guess. Not in my life, but there is a place for some people. I'm not interested, as Chief Halton mentioned, in the short conversation. I'm interested in the long conversation. The conversation that is actually a conversation and not just some diatribe. We have to invest in each other because that is the only resource that pays dividends. Hose and nozzles wear out. We need to invest in each other. So, for me, I traveled. And about 11 years ago or so, somebody said, "Hey, dude, what's up? Would you show me them things you were just doing?" Sure. And those things weren't intended to be shown. They were intended to make me go home and to make sure that my wife and kids knew that I had done everything that I could to prepare. When I've looked across that 2-inch mat that I spent a lot of my life on, and I looked at the person across from me who was exactly the same weight, probably the same strength, probably the same speed, you know what the difference between me and them was? Who was going to win? Who practiced the most? Our job, we get wrapped up in time on the job. Ray McCormick once told me a great quote over a cup of coffee. And I'm going to paraphrase it and let him tell you because he says it better than I do. But this is what it means. It means you can do or you can talk. You can put the work in or you can tell me how much you know from sitting in a recliner flipping channels. You're going to do a class on what, Aaron? I'm going to go back east to do some hose stuff. I know how to do that. Well, why don't you show me? Don't tell me, show me. You know how you know who the best wrestler is? They're wrestling on Friday. You know how you know who the best offensive lineman is? They're playing on Sunday, whether they're a rookie or a 15-year-old pro. It's about preparation, and it's about holistic. We're not talking about times and speeds and those simple little measurements. We're talking about holistic recognition. Someone that's physically a little slower might be holistically faster. But the only way that's going to happen is maps, road maps. Maps in our mind that create algorithms. I heard very early on, every fire is different. If it's scientific, how can it be different? Water and physics haven't changed. Every fire indifferent to me is code for I don't know the rules. Because if we start with the rules and we work from probability to possibility, if we teach everything as equal, we will all behave as though it's equal. It's not equal. There are choices and there are progressions, and it is finite. It is infinite. Every fire is different. Say what you mean. If somebody's hearing you saying something and 2/3 of the people are misunderstanding you, the problem isn't in them, it's in your choice of words. And language is the only tool that every human being uses, and it is imprecise. And my youth was spent translating, understanding what that person was saying in Japanese or Tongan or Vietnamese, and trying to get at the essence of what they were saying, not how they were saying it. So as I traveled and did my thing, what I went away from was stories and went to systems. I started to try to break down these things into tiny little components, which drew mental roadmaps. And as I drew those mental roadmaps, I had to spend time learning how to explain the roadmaps. Comfort is the enemy of growth, period. Don't be comfortable. I'm not saying don't be suspicious of change, that's fine. But you have to have a way to vet it. A way to vet it that is something other than how I feel about it. Because the way you feel about it is prescribed by the roadmap and the angle that you came into town from. You're not seeing the other side of town yet. The fire service, what I've noticed in the fire service is this. Nate, I'm going to borrow you. This is the big problem. We don't have a jargon, which is a language designed for a trade. I spent years learning the language of my trade, and I can go anywhere in the country and say a term, and it means only one term. It means one thing. Yet in this room, there's 4 different definitions for indirect attack. So how can we talk about a fire if we don't describe it in the same way? How can you give me experience if we don't talk about it in the same way? What if we said something like this? Samba no, mini. Hi, my name's Aaron in Mongolian. No joke. Not the most practical second language choice, guaranteed. Fair enough. What if we could say what we meant? And we knew that what we meant was hinged to the context in which it was going to be employed. So that I could turn to my pal and say, knee walk push, Collier. And he knew why we were flowing water and moving. He knew from how far we were going to do it. He knew the context which that application was appropriate, and he knew what I meant by that particular phrasing. 10-4, good buddy. Yeah? We need to have systems. We need to have codes. We need to have a way to talk about things. And what happens in the fire service, and I've spent the last 11 years traveling and learning to translate. Potato, tomato, call it off. That's what happens. This is the fire instructor. It's an instructor's conference. We got to talk about instruction. We got to talk about what its job is. And it's not to ostracize. Knowledge is power when it's shared freely. When it's lorded and hoarded, it is divisive and destructive. In June, I've been married for 26 years. The fire service isn't a business class. Quit cutting up your day like it's some pie graph. Yeah? We build the highest buildings are around money. And we talk about efficient and effective and time and all this. In 26 years of marriage, almost, my wife and I, who's sitting in the front row, have never been 50-50. You know what that sounds like? Failure. It's all in all the time. And some days my all in isn't as much as it was a few days ago. And some days her all in is more than mine and vice versa. But we've never taken each other for granted. We've always had long-term conversations. Conversations that take the power of emotion and funnel it through the filter of our brain so that we can communicate like adults. Yelling and screaming doesn't do anybody any good, and it's how babies act. The fire service at times throws temper tantrums when they should be having long-term conversations. I can't have this conversation in 20 minutes. Chief Halton mentioned it. I'm interested in comprehension and what language does and how it codes us and how it is a reflection of our cultural value. So let's talk about those values. Family. Yeah, sure. You're going to go through the next week and you're going to hear it thrown around. I say this in a lot of classes, but I think it's super important because it sets a tone. I am not an expert firefighter, not in a million years. And what I'm doing today will hopefully be better tomorrow because comfort is the enemy of growth. I'm not an expert firefighter, but I am an absolute expert on what makes family. My biological father loved heroin more than he loved me. I met him twice, and he was less than desirable. But my real dad adopted me, married my mother when I was 9 months old, adopted me, gave me his last name, imparted his values, imparted his approach to the job. And what I heard from my dad early on as his little piece of advice was this: learn something new every day. And if you don't, that should have been your last day. And some days it's easy. We get on the rig and we go, hey boss, that was close. What'd you get out of that? Around a coffee table, not on Facebook, not on a meme, around the coffee table, put that stuff away. That's distractions, it's ether. Communicate and commit to the people in front of you. Your job isn't 50-50, it's all in or get out. Because my wife, who's sitting there, and my kids are at home, needs you to be all in. Not worried about selling real estate or whatever else it is we're doing when we're at work. Every day she goes to work, she has to do her job. No days does she go and watch the ball game. She moves decimal points left to right, 365, 24/7. Doesn't have a single t-shirt that says that. Give people work, and they will ignore the trinkets. Give them ether, and they will go for the trinkets. So, my dad said, learn something new. I try to. Some days it's easier than others. My mother, her advice to me was several. 1, manners are the oil that lubricates society. 2, without the threat of violence, there's no such thing as a civil society, which is grander than the fire service, but apropos. See how I work the French in? The other thing my mom said is, Aaron, you're never the sum of your parts. You are what you do, which is greater than. And she said this, and this is a big one. This is one that we can take to the bank in the fire service. Always be new at something. No matter how good you get on that mat, no matter how far you get with hose, know that there's more, and to always have something in your life that you're new at because it balances the scales and it reminds you of what a beginning mind is like and what to do work is. And you will be wrong, and being wrong is good because it makes us humble, and from humility comes confidence. Because we can fail and we can say I was wrong. If every time we say something, we're in an echo chamber and everyone's like, yeah, that's right, then that's bad for ourselves. That's bad for our ego. It's not EMS, ALS, BLS, IMS. It's none of the S family of foods in the fire service, NIMS. The thing that's the worst for the fire service is ego. Just like everything else. The fire service isn't different than the rest of society. It's part of it. I went to the woods because I wanted to live deliberately. Thoreau. I traveled and studied all these different things because I wanted to make choices. And comfort is the enemy of growth, and the path of least resistance is not what adults should be doing. We should be making choices, and our job has required us to swear an oath. I'm an expert on family. I'm adopted. My father Doesn't even look like me. Those that you know him, know that he doesn't look like me. My father's African American. Family isn't made because we put a patch on. Family isn't made because we have the same last name. Family isn't made because we share DNA. I am every bit my father's son as I am my mother's. Family is made through work. Work fixes everything. That is the backbone of this profession. It's not all this fancy stuff. It's what you do when you go to work every day. And understanding that leadership isn't a rank. It's a behavior pattern that is emitted in every level. Good leaders are good followers. And good leaders know when to step out of the way and let somebody else lead. Leadership isn't a rank, it's a set of behaviors. Exhibit those behaviors regardless of your rank, and the healthiest fire departments have leaders at every level. They're telling them it's getting close. So I'm going to tell you, we play on my fire engine every day. We play this game called Get to Know Ya. And Get to Know Ya is random. I can ask you a random question, you got to answer. You've decided that you're going to put 2 statues in your front yard. They can be anything. What are they? And they don't have to be the same. What are they and why? And you got to answer fast. So let me tell you about one of the questions we'll often ask is, what's your spirit animal? Okay, I don't know what skulls and crossbones have to do with the fire service. The spirit animal of the fire service is a salmon. And here's why. In 1911, the Elwha River was dammed. If you've never seen salmon spawn, it is an exercise in righteousness. It is an exercise in them doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and they know it's there, and it's hard. When you eat them you catch them out of the river and then you smoke them, they're biting because it's delicious. They're biting because they're angry, not because they're hungry. They know exactly what pond they were born in. They go back to it. The Elwha River was dammed in 1911. We're going to run about a minute and a half over, just so we're sure. It was dammed in 1911, and in 1911, they dammed that river, and the salmon run went extinct. There were no more salmon. In 2012, the largest undamming in the history of the United States, they undammed the Elwha. The Elwha sets the bar. The Elwha is my example of what we're supposed to do. Salmon swim upstream. They swim and they swim. They rip their fins off. They swim and they swim, and sometimes they jump in a pool, and they wait, and they wait, and then a bunch of them get in the pool, and they move together. And sometimes they're swimming upstream against adversity. So are we. We're swimming upstream against the fire. We're swimming sometimes upstream against a bunch of no's and petty egos. Sometimes we're not swimming upstream against people, we're swimming with them. But what that one caveat is you're always swimming upstream, even when the river's calm, because you're swimming upstream against time. And what happens is they get to the river, the space they were born, they spawn, and then they move on. They undammed the Elwha, and all the fish biologists and engineers, all the scientists that knew exactly how salmon behaved and why they did what they did, were like, we're going to plant this river, and in about 4 or 5 generations, this river will be a prolific salmon run, just like it was over 100 years ago. And the very next spawning cycle, those engineers realized, and those scientists and those people that fish biologists realized that all of a sudden they didn't know everything they thought they knew. Because the very next year, the very next spawning cycle, wild-born salmon, who hadn't swum that river in over 100 years, were swimming home to where they had been going. The place that they'd been hanging their hat for the last 100 years, they're swimming by to go to the other river, and they wait, the neighborhood's open. And wild-born salmon swim up the very river, hadn't had a salmon swim it in 100 years because it was the right thing to do. So as you go forward in your week and you go forward with your career, do what's right because it's right. Treat people with dignity and respect. Don't browbeat them. And the most important thing you can say as an instructor is, I don't know, or I made a mistake. Cite your sources. It's important. Be the firefighter that you want showing up. We all say that. But mostly, be the salmon. That's our spirit animal. And live deliberately. Live with a purpose. Make your practice purposeful, your conversations purposeful, in your interactions with the public and each other purposeful. And if you do that, there'll be mistakes, there'll be bumps, there'll be conversations. Conflict is resolved through conversations. Lack of conversation leads to conflict. My name's Aaron. Thank you very much.
You don't get off that easy. Here's our man.
Thank you.
Oh, stay. You should have a photographer. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Fields.
All right, let's go do some work.
All right, well, we're just about ready to get out to the classrooms. I see some folks bolting. Remember, tonight, 5 o'clock, the White River State Park, 5K fun run or walk. We've had people do it with cigars and beer. We just want you there. So 5K fun run and walk, then stop, drop, rock, and roll over at the ballroom. And remember, tomorrow we've got the union party. So we got all kinds of great things going on. Have a great rest of your conference. We're so happy you came here. We love you very much. God bless. And we'll see you all back here next year.